on my phone to make sure that you can see this thing and me.
Only the thing.
Okay, I'll stand in front of it then. Okay. Okay. Do you hear sirens? Maybe not right now, but somebody somewhere definitely does. And depending on the person, they may not understand the severity of what they've actually just done. A really misconstrued topic in a lot of court cases is the insanity defense. A lot of people think that it's overused, it's not legitimate, and I'm here to tell you why that's not true. It can definitely help somebody because it can get them the attention and the help that they need that may have not been noticed previous to court hearings after they do some kind of heinous crime. I've been intrigued by criminal law for many years, and one of the biggest things I always wondered is what makes a criminal tick? Why do they do the things they do, especially some of the more famous ones like Ted Bundy and some of the heinous crimes that people like that do? It just really bothered me not to know. So I'm going to answer a couple questions that I've always pondered that some of you guys might, and we're going to look at what makes it legitimate, the reasons that it'll be used for in a criminal case, how often it's actually accepted, and to also talk about a time that it was there and it ended up helping the victim while also not harming society and just releasing them out like a lot of acquittals do. So the insanity plea is really misconstrued, mostly because people like to throw out that it's used all the time. Everybody is, I'm insane, I can't be convicted, it's not fair. So they often associate it with a scapegoat, whereas other people that may be lawyers in court cases trying to pursue the defendant in most cases will say that a lawyer will just throw it out so they can win the court case because it's just easier to say, no, they're insane, there's no way, what's the point? So they can also use the ruling in the defendant's case to make sure that they're getting that treatment, but also not say they didn't do it, because they did, they just can't be held legally, mentally capable to understand why they did it. The insanity plea is an affirmative defense, so people are saying that I did it, I just don't know why I did it. I did it, and it was definitely there, but I can't tell you the reason I did it. It just happened. So in order for it to work, according to trial laws, the insanity plea is entered and stating that they're claiming they cannot be held accountable for their offense because they're legally insane, but they are guilty. This plea can only be held true upon an examination from a medical doctor. They have a very extensive medical procedure that they go through to evaluate the brain and the way it functions, and they have to determine whether it's truly that they are insane or they're just saying it to try to get a lesser sentence. So now you know what it is, but why is it there? So one of the ways that the insanity plea is used is for the reasoning that mentally ill individuals may not be deterred by the threat of punishment. So they may not understand the severity. They're like, okay, you're going to throw me in jail. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to have 2 hots and a cot. Who cares? Another reason is treatment is more likely to protect society than jail is. So if you're in jail and you're mentally insane, you can't take care of yourself. You think you can. But in most cases, if you're genuinely that insane that you committed a crime you didn't understand, you can't protect yourself. So if you're in treatment, you have a lot more supervision to watch to make sure you and others are not hurting you or the people, or sending threats to make sure that you don't feel like the people you love are threatened, and then you do something more in jail to just make it worse and keep adding up. One of the times that the insanity plea is used is sometimes to bargain the disposition of the defendant. So the attorney may not say, I want them acquitted. They could say that they want them, instead of sentenced to life in prison, maybe they are going to treatment in a mental hospital, or even if they have to spend their life there in some cases. And that's according to the Journal of Clinical Psychology, which was written roughly in 1993, 1994. So some things have been edited and changed a little bit, but it's more of a bargaining chip now than it was back then. It used to be a lot more acquittals than there are now. It's also helped, it has also helped to obtain a fair judgment due to the mental status. So instead of looking at them as they're totally sane and can understand everything like you would a normal person, someone who's murdered, they look at more as why and what would be the fairer way to handle it and get them help at the same time without just sending them on their way. So a time that has bothered me that I actually knew a little bit about, but I definitely looked into it more, was Andrea Yates. So she was charged with the capital murder of her children. And she ended up getting an acquittal, but spent the rest of her life in a mental asylum due to it. She was originally sentenced to a life in prison in 2002. And she had filled a bathtub with water and just methodically drowned each of her 5 children, proceeded to call authorities and call her husband at work and say that she needed help. Well, when they got there and the officer asked what happened, she just blankly said, "I killed my kids." No idea, like, the severity of what she'd done. She just came out with it. According to Listverse, when she later, in 2005, overturned the hearing, she received another one in 2006 and was found not guilty by reason of insanity, which a lot of people argued wasn't fair because she definitely did it, so she shouldn't have been found not guilty, but instead had a different bargaining chip, which is why they use it differently now. She had a long history of postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis and had several experiences where she had meltdowns. And she actually, before she was released, she was in a mental asylum that she got released from about 4 weeks before she killed them. And she, while she was in jail, she admitted that for like the past 2 years, she had debated on killing them, that she was marked by Satan, she was a bad mom, and that the only way to save them from hell was to kill them. So the reason she got her overturned is because guards heard that and turned it over to proper authorities because they felt the inmates that were around her were at stake now, because she clearly didn't care. She just thought she had a reason to do it, so she did it. So they ended up looking farther into it than the guards ever meant for them to. She still pursued treatment after she was released, but she wouldn't admit to depression because she didn't cry. She felt that you had to cry to have depression, that is what defined it, and she didn't want to admit to that. So she admitted to the psychosis, just never the depression. And she actually had warnings from her doctors that she should not be left home alone with her children, and she still was. So they kind of pursued the husband a little bit, but that later just fell through and they left it alone because it had been so long. So with that, the plea of insanity actually helped not only get her the attention she needed, but her release was because her insurance quit paying. So they didn't want to release her, but they had to. They weren't receiving money, so they just sent her on her way. So instead, the courts ordered that she had to be there so that the state would pay for it. And then she was actually getting help, whereas if insurance wouldn't have quit paying, it probably wouldn't have happened. So she remained in there. I believe she's still alive. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't exactly say. But she's been in there since then because they just don't feel she's well enough to be out on the streets. Many people are hesitant about the insanity plea because it is attempted often. Not many go through with acceptance in it. So here I have the percentage of pleas and acquittals in given states, and the blue is the pleas, and in California, they're about 0.5%, Georgia is about 1.5, New Jersey is about 0.5, New York is a little under 0.5, Ohio is about 1%, Washington is a little over 0.5, and then Wisconsin is about 0.75% of all cases where people could have brought it up, and they actually did. Less than one defendant in a group of 100, it's actually 0.85 is the statistic. That's the only people that actually even raise the idea of the insanity plea in their cases. The actual acquittals are much lower than the ones that are brought up. The highest one is actually Washington, and that's at only 0.5%. So the constant success rate of the insanity plea when it is brought up in the 7 states shown is 28.1%. So only about a fourth of them go through, and not very many people even bring it up. So I hope you've learned more about kind of the idea behind the insanity plea, and it definitely opened your eyes a little bit, because I feel like in society everybody's like, everybody has problems, who cares? I mean, I know I felt that way for a really long time. So instead of that, then now you can know that the insanity plea is important in recognizing and treating illness, especially in cases like Yates, where maybe the insurance failed you and now you're not sure why you did what you did. Because I mean, I would be scared if I did something like that and then I'm like, well, why'd I do it? I feel like that would be more terrifying to me than being somebody who just goes out and does it and is like, well, I did it because I wanted to. So now you can kind of learn to judge instead of just understanding, and you could probably save somebody's hope for humanity, especially somebody that doesn't understand what's going on.